This story is called See You Tomorrow. The new girl from across the street was looking at him again. Sometimes he saw her looking at him from her porch, but this wasn't that. Their porches were 50 or 100 feet apart. This was inches. Inches. For the last 5 minutes, he'd been walking his bike alongside hers up the long hill. Neither of them could ride without weaving back and forth. There were too many cars this time of day after school, so for the longest 5 minutes of his life, he'd been inches from her side, side by side, bike by bike. She was in the gravel, furthest from the traffic, and he was walking more or less in the traffic lane beside her. Other than some cars, there was no one else around and only a few inches between them. He wanted to say something besides hi. The hi had gone really well, he thought, but that was like 3 or 4 minutes ago, and ever since then his mouth just felt sticky, like his words were walking barefooted on this bubbly tar roadside. He wanted to ask her about her homeroom or school in general, or compliment her bike, or her blonde and gold hair, or, well, no way he could say anything about her hair. But he wanted to. He really wanted to. He was just running out of time. He didn't even know what she liked to be called. He thought he heard her friends call her Allie and others call her Allison, but he wasn't sure. He also wasn't sure if her last name was Wood or Woods. He wanted to ask about that too, even though he was pretty sure it was Wood. He didn't know how to start the conversation he'd imagined. She was too new, and he was too shy. 5 minutes, and their first walk ever was almost over. They'd be at the top of the hill soon, and he'd have to ride behind or in front of her the rest of the way to their street. If he didn't at least ask her if she'd like to ride around on their street, maybe even ride to school sometime or something. He'd have to start at the bottom of this hill all over again, another day. More than high for an opener. Not that this walk had been all that bad. It was nice, mostly. Kind of like a really short date, he thought. But not a date. Jeez, of course not a date. Not anything at all like a date, but still good and satisfying. And he'd imagined riding to school together would be like that, only shorter. And now he was running out of time. He could feel his heart in his face and in his hands gripping the handlebars of his bike. This had not really gone as planned. They had reached the foot of the hill at about the same time. That was by design. He followed at a safe distance as everyone left the school lot, watching her ride ahead, rolling over the curbs from street to street, imagining what they'd talk about on their walk together up the hill. He crossed the street in the last block and sped up so that he could pedal along opposite her, and then he crossed back to her side at the foot of the hill. They'd stopped together. "Hi," he'd said. "Hi," she'd replied. She'd smiled, too. He was pretty sure she'd smiled, too. And for these 5 minutes, it had been a great walk together, even though he hadn't told her any of the things he wanted to tell her, like about the treehouse behind the house next to hers. And by the way, did she know that he customized his bike with the generator lights and speedometer and toolkit? Well, yeah, she'd probably noticed them by now, but he hadn't talked about them. Why hadn't he talked about them? Now, though, they were almost to the top of the hill, and he was almost out of time, and he could feel her looking at him again. This was as close as he'd been to her since she moved in across the street, and he'd wasted it. Wasted it. He turned and looked at her finally, and she was smiling, like she thought he was about to say something as she swung back onto her bicycle seat. "You don't talk a lot, do you, Will?" she asked. "She knows my name. I can't believe she knows my name." He tried to breathe and say something back. "That's okay," she said, when he didn't reply. He could see their street and her driveway from where they'd paused at the top of the hill. She started pedaling away from him. "See you tomorrow," she said over her shoulder as the bike rolled ahead. It took a second or two to get his mouth moving. "Yeah, oh, okay," he said finally as inches became yards. He added, "See you tomorrow, too," as he got back on his own bike, breath and words still competing for escape from his uncooperative mouth. "See you tomorrow," and that was good, right? Either from the porch or at the bottom of the hill, or maybe even in the hall or at the cafeteria at school. "See you tomorrow," she'd said. And it had sounded really nice. He was so happy. He just sat there in that spot on his bike and watched her till she disappeared.